Hey everybody out there, this is Roy Carter from Rectitude Media, and it's been a while, so I figured I might as well give an update, what's going on in the world and all that jazz, and my take on things. Well, we've got what happened in the States with Chief Justice Antonin Scalia, I believe was his name. He was found dead at a hunting ranch in Texas, and I thought it was kind of interesting because normally I would say, he's an old guy, definitely kind of a big guy like myself, and, most possibly might have died probably of natural causes. But when you look at just how it was covered in the mainstream media, also how it was completely kind of, there's some laws broken in Texas in the way that they actually handled this case, and it's kind of sketchy, I have to say. I mean, he was found, to begin with a pillow on his face. Someone has a heart attack, and they have, like, a pillow on their face. I can understand maybe if he woke up and he's like, oh, my chest, a pillow, maybe it's just, like, indigestion or something. Pretty much the only thing I can think of, but they didn't have an actual coroner arrive on the scene to pronounce him dead. In fact, or to find out what the cause of death was. In fact, they kind of just had I believe a judge on the phone. They couldn't get anyone close for, I guess there was three judges who were phoned to clarify and to find out to go there and all that jazz and find out what happened with his death. And I guess one of them on the phone said that he died of natural causes on the phone without actually going to in person to find out whether or not there was any hemorrhaging in the eyes and different muscles, where is a prime example of someone's been suffocated. Just basic stuff. I mean, this is like stuff that, which is really textbook, just kind of medical examiner stuff that should easily be followed, but it wasn't. And the fact that the mainstream media just kind of like, it's okay, anyone who questions this is just crazy, especially when you see the fact that Scalia was a pretty prominent member on when it came to blocking, I guess, the Obama, the whole climate change bill where he was trying to kill the coal industries from being able to start another coal plant or whatnot. And I believe he put his foot down on that and went against Obama. So it's kind of interesting how just days after he stops a climate bill and puts the globalists in their place, he ends up dying mysteriously. And just the fact that they said right off the bat, without giving it any time, without actually having a coroner, there was no autopsy. I mean, I'm sorry, but the family's kind of stupid that way, because, I mean, yeah, but she, like one of the head justices on the Supreme Court, and, you would at least think that, considering he didn't have a security detail, which he normally brings with him, considering it was just kind of, like on Valentine's Day or President's Day weekend in the States, that they would have at least thought, hey, maybe we should investigate, maybe we should do a toxicology reports. In fact, they flushed his body fluids down a drain and left it at that. They didn't even put it in bags or any kind of container for future possibilities of finding out what was going on. It really does seem that this is kind of just a wipe it under the rug, and then you have, I guess, homicide detectives and other people that have came out and said, hey, no, this is kind of stupid. The very least they should have done was at least an autopsy, or was at least, to question why or not there was a pillow found on top of this guy's head. And I mean, the gentleman who owns the ranch, a guy named John D. Poindexter, I believe, and he actually is a well-decorated Vietnam veteran. He did some black ops operations, I guess, and from what I've been able to find out, and he was awarded by Obama, gone to the White House and given an award for, even though he's heavily contributed to the Obama campaign. And I find that's kind of suspicious, considering that, he's, more of a conservative, Scalia, and more of a conservative kind of a judge and whatnot. So, I mean, whether or not, obviously can't prove it now because they pretty much took away the evidence as fast as they can, but this isn't something that's completely above or that unheard of for the Obama administration, because the NDAA Act pretty much allows them to destroy or kill whoever they want, really, that they see as a threat. And when you see the fact that Scalia has been probably with one single person that has done a lot to stop the New World Order from putting in their whole carbon scheme, and which doesn't work, and it's kind of interesting to see where it's kind of gone that way. And I think that's also another thing that should be mentioned is what's going on in Syria right now with Merkel. Like, she's in enough hot water with her own people as it is. And here she is trying to declare that NATO needs to have a no-fly zone in Syria to stop Russia. And it's like, okay, we really had, like, just for anybody out there who's not following this whole Turkey situation or Russia situation or what's going on in Syria, at the very least, we are funding Free Syrian Army, which does have al-Nusra combatants in there, and also al-Qaeda affiliated rebels in there that have been fighting alongside them. As much as they try to admit to deny it, it's true. In fact, before they even used that excuse of the Free Syrian Army, they were funding al-Qaeda groups in with the whole Libya campaign. I mean, they practically funded the al-Qaeda elements to take out Gaddafi, and that's when they when they shot him in the head, and they're screaming Allah Akbar, and God is great, doing the old chant there for the crazy side of Islam, and it's kind of interesting how Merkel, of all the people who, she's already at the point where her own government is just at the point with this whole Cologne crisis, with that whole them trying to put things under the rug, which was a really horrible way of trying to deal with things. Because if you give criminals the idea that they're not going to get punished for their actions, they're going to keep doing it. That's basic common knowledge. I mean, you got people that are coming from a war zone. So do you think they give a damn about what the cops say? No, they don't. In fact, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, And it's kind of sad because there are people out there that just want to get away from a war zone and actually live a nice life with their families that aren't, crazy people, but those few people that actually, ruin it for the rest of them. And that's usually how it is. That's how it goes, But God forbid you question that. And it's really scary if we go into a no-fly zone in Russia, because Russia is the only actual country that's been allowed by Syria, like, legitimately. All the other countries, shouldn't be anywhere near Syria, because, Assad is the actual, he's not like Sunni or Shiite, he's Alawite. And even though he, his culture only consists of 10% of the population, he got the popular vote. It's a secular government for the most part. And that's something that Turkey doesn't want. And I really don't give a damn about what Turkey says, because they have been caught openly. I mean, as much as you want to give, say the Russians are being complacent in propaganda, they've shown the footage of these miles-long convoys of terrorists taking stolen Kurdish oil from Syria and putting it through Turkey. Obviously they're getting money through it. Obviously Turkey is funding ISIS through the buying and selling of stolen Syrian oil, and that's what it comes down to, And then you got John McCain when he found out the Russian. Within days of Russia starting their bombing campaign, they dropped more bombs than the States did, and they also didn't give any 45-minute little leaflet warnings like the U.S. has been known for doing, which doesn't really stop any kind of problem that's going on over there. In fact, it kind of encourages it. Yeah, they may suffer a little bit of damage, but when you're bringing in millions and millions of dollars in oil revenue, possibly billions, what's an old beat-up oil tanker going to cost you? Nothing. But if you don't have the people that you can't pay to keep driving in there, well, and as much as you try to make that argument that there was contractors, that this is what the U.S. has been trying to say, right? I'm just trying to think of all the stuff that they've been countering. I try to make it to inform you about the debate on both sides here and the counter-arguments. But, when you look at the Iraq War, for example, when Halliburton was getting these contractors from India in these old oil rigs that actually already had a couple of IED explosions. Like, you see, if you ever watch, it's on YouTube, a good documentary called the Iraq War Tapes, or the War Tapes, when they were, it's pretty much a documentary given to a bunch of, I guess there was like a a group of guys that were going into Iraq. They were given some cameras, just to kind of like show what was going on and whatnot. And I don't think the military really realized that that was probably a bad idea. And they go into Iraq. They're all gun ho. They're ready to kick ass. And but then after a while, they're sitting there. They're like, hey, we're protecting these like oil tankers. They're pretty much going on these convoy runs when they're risking their lives. They're not really doing anything to like help the country out. They're just protecting these oil tankers, protecting these rations and provisions transports. And they realize that, like, holy crap, they got these, like, Indian guys, these Pakistani guys that come in that get paid practically peanuts to go drive these vehicles with oil tankers and stuff like that. And, they're heavily susceptible to IEDs. And, like, the terrorists didn't give a damn. The Halliburton obviously didn't give a damn about giving them, proper protection or, making it so, they're not getting, blown to smithereens. But those are people that were just trying to, work with the U.S. in, to feed their family. And, I can understand there are probably people that are being hired by ISIS to drive these tankers because there's a shit ton of them. But, I mean, when you're into that kind of situation, you also have to realize that you're being targeted by a major superpower, which is something that they weren't beforehand. So, anybody who would take that job in the first place in Syria of transporting those trucks from Turkey, across the border and stuff from Syria into Turkey, is pretty much taking, you're being a participant in war. Because when you look at the oil lines, that's a huge resource. So, there's obviously money being funneled through that. That's going back to ISIS. And Turkey is completely complacent in all of this. In fact, Erdogan has tried to say many different times that, if there's any evidence, then I will step down and blah, 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 blah. And then this whole thing about he's having this, he's against the Kurds. It's like, man, you're already supporting ISIS, and you have a problem with the Kurds, when the U.S. is actually trying to work with the Kurds. It's just ridiculous. And most of the time, Kurds were in charge of the northern Iraq oil fields for quite some time. And actually, the destabilization of Iraq has actually, really kind of hurt them and their culture, because they had a lot of their refineries and stuff and profits being taken from them. So it's kind of ridiculous how, in one country there seems to be like three factions that none of the sides can agree is doing what. It's almost like the Americans have everyone in the mainstream media fooled into thinking, it's because of the states that ISIS is on the run from Aleppo, which is total bullshit, because Russia, has done more with the Syrian army to get those people out of Aleppo. That the U.S. has been dropping 45-minute leaflets, giving them a 45-minute warning, which is just, it's like, if you're going to take out the people that are beheading people and or destroying the supply lines, you do it. You don't just give them warnings and stuff. Like, here we are, the States that doesn't have any problems killing people abroad. This is historically, especially, they had no problem, sending Pinochet or, like the Shah and, all these people they've installed that have killed, countless amounts of people, thank you, Kissinger, and Brzezinski, and all that, horrible follies of U.S. foreign policy. And it's crazy. It really is. And yet they care so much about those Turkish drivers, for ISIS. Oh my God, it's so laughable. It's not even a joke anymore. They're putting it right in your face. There used to be there used to be no evidence about the whole it used to be a slow implementation of the New World Order. Now it's like TPP. We'll throw that right by in people's so there's no democratic debate in any of the parties about that whatsoever. Let's fast track that. Let's fast track the transatlantic partnership too. Let's fast track CETA, the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement. It's ridiculous. All these agreements that they keep talking about, which are actually treaties, I mean, bear no mind about it. These are gonna be, these are actual like living documents that are gonna change the way that you and I and anybody else on the internet is going to be able to, conduct business. And I mean, this because these things aren't even ratified right now. They've talked about this for about 5-6 years on how they're going to protect intellectual property rights, how they're going to protect patents, how they're going to protect multinational interests so that they can sue a public hospital if a private hospital thinks that they're losing business. Just stupid stuff like that, and we're letting it happen so that we're taking all the governing out of North America, out of even countries in Europe, and we're giving it to these unelected officials in the EU and the UN, which is something that I completely disagree with, and I've said in many different videos is a completely bad idea. I mean, look at NAFTA. I mean, have we had a strong manufacturing? We've bled manufacturing jobs with NAFTA. And we're bleeding manufacturing jobs with the TPP, with all these other free trade agreements, which is just ridiculous because it's only free trade for a certain group of people. Just like only a certain group of banks are allowed to have bank bailouts and low interest rates. But yet, when you try to go and get a credit card, you're lucky to maybe get a 16% interest rate or a 20% interest rate, And it's just another way of how they fleece the average person, how most of these policies that they're making behind closed doors is meant to fuck us all over. It's not meant to help out the average person. It's not meant to make it so that society advances. I mean, when you look at like amazing scientific discoveries, like what was it, like Einstein with his gravitational waves being proven? I mean, like just the amount of time and measurement and just. It's crazy how someone that came up with that theory in 1916, for example, it's right. And that should be bringing us all together. This should be, like, bringing us all to be like, hey, you know what, we're just one tiny speck out there floating in this 40 billion, 40 billions of, like, star systems and whatnot in this galaxy, or 400 billion, that's what I meant to say, but still a mind-boggling amount when you think about just how when you take this rock floating around in space, and there's all these people fighting over, ethnicity or, sex or, stupid shit like that. It really just makes you wonder, like, why, and it gets me why people aren't more concerned about the fact that we're possibly at a World War III scenario with Russia. I mean, we got a proxy war with Ukraine that the mainstream media, especially here in Canada, seems to completely ignore. Because they don't like to bring up the fact that there's certain elements of that government that are run by neo-Nazi factions. Yet, some kid, spray paints a swastika at a bus stop and it becomes fucking news here in Canada. But yet we support neo-Nazis while also, giving complete, support and leeway to Israel. In fact, the conservatives were all like, trying to pass laws where if you, try to boycott anything from Israel, then, you're a criminal. And it's like, how can we do that as a nation? How can we support Israel and the Zionist aspect of it, and then support neo-Nazis in Ukraine? It doesn't make any sense to me. And then the fact that the Canadian media does not report on it is just mind-blowing. I mean, the Minsk2 Agreement, right now, if you look at what's going on through the alternative news media outlets that are actually reporting on this, there are aspects. Like, they're going into the Donetsk and Lugansk region. They're still still conducting, not airstrikes, but artillery strikes. I mean, they went over and took out, like, the power for a good portion of that area, which was completely a war crime, because then you have, like, wintertime, people that are freaking, freezing to death and starving to death, when they're just trying to, live in their own country. I mean... And what gets me is the fact that look how bad the central bankers have been treating Greece. Like, here they're telling the people of Greece, nope, sorry, you're screwed. I know, even though the average Greece person didn't fix the numbers, and I know the Syriza party had nothing to do with the fact that, way back in the day, that they, had to use Goldman Sachs to fudge the figures to get them into the EU in the first place to amount all this freaking debt. And, but they have to pay it back. They have to sell out public assets to be able to pay them back. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You borrow, you gotta pay it back. But yet Ukraine, for example, because it's being used as a U.S. proxy war with the West against Russia, they're completely allowed to have extensions on the money that they have to pay back to the EU. They're allowed to, not pay back every single penny that they borrowed from it. And that's what I think is a huge double standards of the UN and the EU bureaucracy. And it's really going to show you just how open this New World Order is. There used to be a time where people would say, hey, you know what, you're crazy. There's no such thing as that. But when it's being blatantly shoved down our throats, when we're having these carbon scams, and you know what? We do affect climate to a certain degree. I mean, deforestation, when Kamenko dumped 100 tons of lead into the freaking water when I was out in Nelson, British Columbia, in 2008, that was ridiculous. And, I mean, you look at Freedom Industries in West Virginia, where they completely screwed up the water supply there and contaminated. It's ridiculous. Same thing with Flint, Michigan. And, Erin Brockovich. You don't hear too much about from her that much anymore since the 90s. But she's pretty much said there's about 1,000 different cases of just apparent abuse of public services and utilities that are going on in the States right now, at any given time. You got the New Jersey toxic waste that, people are still, having in their freaking playgrounds and stuff like that. It's ridiculous how much the system is corrupted and broken, and how little the average person gives a shit, and how little the mainstream media actually does their job to report on this stuff. It's mind-boggling. In fact, we are at a time where there is no real precedent. I mean, beforehand, let's say, to take this whole thing with Chief Justice Scalia. The fact that InfoWars is doing a better job at contacting the coroner and the embalmer than the mainstream media is, that's ridiculous. 30, 40 years ago, you'd have a whole shit ton of media outlets out there, trying to get the scoop, trying to do their job of investigative journalism. That's something that just doesn't happen now. It's been killed by opinion journalism, and it's been killed by the same people that give out these White House talking points in the States, or give out the liberal talking points here in Canada. It's very rare that we can actually get the truth. And I don't know, maybe where you may be listening to this video from, but here in Canada, our media is so watered down and bullshit, it's not even funny. Here they'll try to give you some, thing, what happens locally, or some sort of they won't tell you about what's going on in the grand picture of things. And in fact, for the longest time, they've been this huge scapegoat of how wonderful how wonderful and multinational and accepting Canadians are bringing in these Syrian refugees, and not thinking about any possible, bad things that could happen from it. I mean, there's been cases of a guy from Montreal, a guy from Vermont that was a journalist that was kidnapped and being held for ransom, and he could have sworn that the people he heard. He said Canadian accent, and I'm kind of like, Canadian accent, huh? And I'm like, we don't really talk with that whole, hey, Canadian accent, especially Canadian terrorists talking while he was being in prison. But sure enough, when he came back and, he thought he was going to die, and they were probably going to kill him, they got all of his information, bank accounts, stuff like that, and started buying stuff and sent some of the stuff to Montreal. So, there's always going to be an extremist element in any kind of religion, and that's a sad truth. But when you're allowing, when you take the left, for example, in Cologne, when they waited that long to report on the rape, the rape during New Year's, there was 600 reports of assaults. That is a ridiculous amount in one city at one night. And when you allow that stuff to happen, you perpetuate it. Instead of actually dealing with the problems, putting those people that do these crimes in jail, telling the rest of the people, don't do that. You're coming to our country now, so for fuck's sake, smarten up. We're not going to be living under your Sharia law. I'm not okay with putting a fucking headdress on a woman and making it so that if she goes outside without a man, then she gets stoned to fucking death if, someone decides to rape her or some shit like that. That is stupid. And that has no place in Western fucking society. And if that makes me politically incorrect and an insensitive white male, then so fucking be it. I'm happy. Bring it on. Because the feminists won't fucking go up and have some balls and say, no, we shouldn't be encouraging a very offensive, religion and ideology that treats women as just baby makers and treats male as the supreme being, and that women don't have the right to vote or any kind of say in their society. And I think that's completely screwed up and not anything to do with Western values. I have no problem if people want to come over here and practice whatever crazy religion or do whatever kind of crazy sexual stuff they do with consenting adults. I'm a libertarian in that way. I don't really care. If it doesn't affect the society as a whole, if it doesn't affect anybody else, then by all means do it. It's not a big deal. But when you have people that are trying to come over here and then enforce their religion on us and make us feel bad about it, fuck that shit. Not gonna happen. No way, Jose. Nada. So, I have to really say is that we've kind of came to this crazy point where, we really have to figure out what's going on as a society. Because, in the 80s and the 60s and the 50s, when they had that little corny commercial of those black and white school children, sitting at the, in front of the teacher, and then all of a sudden, when you see the flash, duck and cover, even though it wasn't really, useful, because if a nuclear explosion went off, no amount of ducking or cover is really going to save your ass anyways. But at least it put this this idea in the back of people's minds that there's a possibility that we could go to war with Russia at any time. And we don't have that nowadays. In fact, so many people now are so concerned about what, some celebrity like Kanye Pest, says on fucking Twitter. Then, that's the big thing now. God forbid somebody's, intolerant. So, we're going to talk about that, even though our whole way of life is being completely co-opted and controlled by, freaking umbrella arm elites that, are exempt from taxation, are exempt from criminal prosecution, that aren't held to the same laws that the average person is, So, that's pretty much my beef right now. But I definitely think we have to keep an eye on what's going on with the no-fly zone situation in Syria. That's a big one. China right now has definitely been getting some slack. They've been going up and down like crazy with their economy, so I think it's just a matter of time before the people in China, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a popular uprising, at least, like we saw with the umbrella revolution, with the whole thing in Shanghai. But I believe that, they're trying to do everything they can with the Chinese government. This whole implementation and making mandatory sesame credit is kind of stupid. And it's definitely a way to control the population. But that's because China is in a position, and I've already done a video on this, probably one of the longest ones I did, because just the amount of stuff I had to cover. And you see them bringing out the two-child policy and relaxing a little bit of the limitations that they have on their Hoku, which is pretty much a passport that you need to go from province to province to be able to work in certain areas. Because if you don't have it, then you're pretty much considered you're practically just there to work. You're considered a laborer. You don't have any rights. You don't have any say. You don't get any. It's ridiculous. It's just a horrible, tyrannical way to govern a country and stuff. But the better living conditions you make a country, the more people have access to more information. The more people can find different ways around to bypass the state-controlled internet that can go out there, that can actually find different alternative opinions and through proxy servers and stuff, or VPN. And, that way they start figuring out a lot more. And as much as you try to crack down on that stuff, as much as you try to make it so that, like they were doing with the retirement age, they were trying to give the pensions kind of like a one pension for everyone as opposed to a low class and a high class pension, which, really did make a lot of people happy. Some people not so much, but it really does seem that like the people in China are the ones that can really put their foot down and say, hey, enough is enough, and we're gonna we want better living conditions. We want better wages. We want to have because when you look at this whole climate change thing, here you are, this Agenda 21. They're trying to close down all these coal plants. Well, meanwhile, they're opening up all these coal plants in China. And, China and India pretty much were exempt for quite some time. And it wasn't only until recently that they started being into the whole carbon trading credits. But the thing about these carbon credits is that they really don't do anything. They don't stop the amount of carbon. They don't cut carbon at all. In fact, they make it so that a company that has money to spend can pretty much just buy these offsets. And carbon credit idea for one thing is, if they were to keep it just as like one company, let's say if they put out a lot of carbon or whatnot, a lot of pollution, then that tax that they'd have to pay would be put into that local economy or put into that industry so that they can find other ways of making it so that the environment doesn't get as screwed over. Then that's actually not too bad. Like I wouldn't have as much problems as I have with this whole carbon offset scheme, which is, let's say if you have a big producer, well, these carbon offsets, when they first evaluate what you can actually, what types of, like, how much carbon that you can actually, like, for their first analysis, they see how much carbon. So let's say you're a big polluter, as it is, usually the metallurgy companies. You got these, like, metallurgy companies that are pumping out all this pollution. Well, what they do is they evaluate, okay, well, because you're a large producer of pollution, we'll give you a large cap so that you can sell certain stuff. If you can cut a little bit every now and then you can sell that to other companies. But there's also a lot of companies that keep polluting, that have money, that are just going to buy offsets from other industries around the world, and then just be like, hey, we get to keep polluting, but we just throw money into this Al Gore carbon scheme that came up by Kenneth Lay and Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank and all those other corrupt assholes. So that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's not anything about trying to, invest into renewable energy. It's nothing, and that's what really gets me, is that there was just a recent report here. I'm trying to remember it was on the Rebel Medias where I first saw it, but they were talking about how on Ontario, that the average Ontarian is like paying over like $2,000 or $4,000 more than what we should have actually paid for, just because of the gross negligence of Hydro One, and also just the mismanagement of that company, and just how screwed the Liberals are, when it comes to taxation and everything. It's just crazy how we're getting fleeced. And the average Canadian, here in Ontario, most people realize the hydro prices are getting ridiculous. Right now from this time, I believe it's, for like 10 to 5, it's like having anything on right now is just ridiculous. How much you get gets charged. And I'd be working right now, but my back is totally screwed up. I got 3 discs in my spine that I screwed up from a work injury, so that gives me plenty of time. But it also means I'm going to the doctors and having to use public transportation. I'm usually taking the bus, so if I have like 1 or 2 meetings in a day, that's pretty much my day right there on the bus, because it takes an hour and a half to go anywhere here because of the way the buses are. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is we're at a point now where we really have to be careful of what's going on. We have to call out things for what they are. There's all these different plans out there to try to make it so that you have to feel bad about being who you are. You got to feel bad for being a white male. You got to feel bad for for something that you had no control over when you were born. But that's what society's all about, fighting over now. It's all about, we got to fight amongst the little things and create these little tribal mentalities of this group versus that group. And you know what? I listen to conservatives. I listen to liberals. When conservatives are being overly conservative, that pisses me off. And in a way, with they're valuing private enterprise and like multinational corporations over individual people and the health of their people, that's when I draw the line. I say no. Do I believe that a person should be able to work their butt off and have a thing where they sell stuff that they believe in and then make money off of that and then prosper? I have no problem with that. I don't want to this whole communist ideology of somebody that makes a lot of money has to give everything to everyone else. There's a certain amount when you get a huge increase in the wealth inequality gap, then you have to figure out that balance of how do you make it so that you make it so that there is a middle class. What we've done now with quantitative easing, 8 years, for 8 years, Obama, and even up to Obama's last speech about how wonderful the economy is doing, when you have major banks saying 2016 is the year, sell, sell, sell. Don't buy a house. You had Leary, and as much as I hate that guy, he's in the business. He knows what's going on. He knows that this whole monetary system is about to freaking collapse. And the thing is, when I talk about the economic collapse, and when I do my series, my videos, what I'm trying to tell everyone is this is not a conspiracy. This isn't just, when people say, oh, you just think a handful of bankers are trying to run the world. That's because they are trying to run the world. Take the Council on Foreign Relations. They have way too much power for unelected officials. Hillary Clinton, I tell you, Google this on YouTube and say search Hillary Clinton gets told what to do by the CFC, and you'll see where she's talking about I'm so glad the Defense Department is right down the road from you guys, so I don't have too far to go to be told what to do. It's just like she actually said that during a CFC interview on the record. That's just how corrupt and open this is. When you have it so that in third world countries, they're not being allowed to have cheap energy that, it may pollute, but hey, these people need the energy right now as a third world nation to be able to get to that point where they can develop enough before they can start using, it's ridiculous. It really is. It is a total scheme to keep poor nations poor. It's all meant for these carbon offsets. Carbon credits are listed as a junk bond on the global markets. They're junk bonds, there's people that bought junk bonds during 2008, 2009 because they knew that there was going to be returns. From an economic perspective. But those people were definitely opportunists because they're the same people that probably had a hand in the collapse of the banks in the first place. And the fact that we bail out these giant, it's not a free enterprise. It's not capitalism. We don't live in a capitalist system. Nowhere in Adam Smith does he talk about having a central bank. Nowhere does he talk about having an income tax. In fact, those are both communist tenets. And when I was younger in high school, I had a good group of friends. My buddy was, I used to be all Che Guevara and stuff. And I love that, being young, that revolutionary spirit, really. But when I actually kind of looked more and more into just how communism was used to, take guns away, to demoralize populations, to murder 50 to 60 million people, depending whether or not you're looking at Mao Zedong or, Stalin. And it's just sad how, different systems. I could see myself if I was living with a bunch of friends on an island somewhere, and we were, there was maybe 20 people or something like that, and we were all living in this thing. Communism would work. I'd be fine with that there because you know what you're putting into, where everyone's getting the same amount kind of thing. I'm fine with that. But when you look at a global scale of things, when you turn things to, to the point where there's a lot of people, a lot of population, and a lot of resources at stake, you're never going to find a leader or a government group that's going to equally divvy things out. There's always going to be people that are paying the ones that got them into office in the first place. That's just how politics works. And that is the greed aspect of politics. And until we get rid of that, no matter what we do, no matter what kind of scientific, like even if we go towards that whole, the Venus project, if we still have that corruption and that greed in there, then it's just going to get used against us. Any kind of technological advancement. I mean, just look what they're doing with the, with the RFID chips, trying to say, oh, chip your kids, you'll never lose them, and all that other stuff. And I'm very against having your, I'm very against people invading your privacy. I mean, anybody should be able to have their own privacy and should be able to do their own things and have their own opinions without having people monitor it, or especially when it gets to the point where monitoring is only really the first stage, because then you have that whole monitoring, you don't want to say something because, God forbid you might offend someone, or, you don't want to do something because that you're not supposed to, or, or that, a good citizen wouldn't do something like that. It's just, it really does affect the way people think as a society. I mean, when you look at, for example, I guess with like the whole civil rights, I mean, it used to be nobody thought about it. Everybody was just like, we're white, they're black, or other countries or whatnot, and ain't nothing gonna change about that. But no, we've actually kind of realized that it's a bad thing. It's that we have different people, and our cultures are going to differ from a lot of different opinions and how we're raised, and I believe we should celebrate that aspects of things. But and that is actually kind of a good way of how we've been, how society has kind of advanced. When you look about the fact 50 years ago there was maybe more in the States. I mean, I couldn't really say 50 years ago here in Canada. I mean, there's always been like the people here in Canada that are impartial to race and stuff like that. We haven't really been known for being as racist, but I mean, we also had the Aboriginal, like the residential schools up until like the 90s, like 96 I think was the last one that closed, which is, definitely a bad part in Canadian history. So, it's not like we're impervious to, going from, like developing society into something beneficial into turning society into something that's just horribly tyrannical. A lot of people right now with what's going on with Rachel Notley when she, with the NDP, I mean, this is what I have to say is that like the local NDP, from where I am in Oxford is, I've said it before, they're great people. Like Zoe Kutchner was the federal candidate here, and I've talked to her, and I actually, like, she is really strongly worried about these free trade deals and all this other stuff that's going on with the New World Order. Like, she's pretty awake to that stuff, and she also has a lot of reservations. So I was totally for voting for her and helping her out with her campaign. And also Brian Smith in the provincial, because Brian's just an amazing guy. He's been trying to do everything he can to stop the dump here just outside of Ingersoll, and also very heavily involved in the local community. And I mean, I probably should get back into the whole, at least going with the Oxford Coalition for Social Justice, because that was actually kind of cool and it wasn't really partisan, which was nice. But the NDP, once I realized that, I'm trying to remember what her name was. I know Paul DeWar and another lady, I can't remember exactly what her name is at this moment in time, were completely supportive of the Kiev regime. I was just, nope, that's enough. Also, kind of mixed on the refugee crisis. Don't believe that we should, I mean, like, there are definitely concerns that are being brought up. The fact that Ezra Levant, as much as I'm not a big fan of his conservative viewpoints, they do make a good point about the fact that they've put information requests to find out what's going on, because they've heard from people on military bases saying that they're using taxpayer money to build mosques on military bases in Canada, which I definitely disagree with. And the fact that we're not properly vetting these refugees that are coming over is also another serious issue. And as much as the mainstream media tries to say that we're vetting these people, the Freedom of Information requests speak for themselves. people don't have anything to hide, they usually release that information, release the steps and stuff that they do, instead of stonewalling freedom of information requests and trying to wait to the last possible day, and to some cases even doing the illegal route by not not giving information when they're being paid with taxpayer money. So that's where I definitely draw the line. It really does seem that Canada is just more, they just try to be, hey, I'm all for multicultural, I'm all for refugees and different people like coming over and stuff, because that's what the best part about Canada is. Like, my best buddy in high school told me about the Chilean with Augustus Pinochet, and just kind of woke my eyes up to just American foreign policy during the 60s and 70s under Kissinger, and other wonderful people like that. But it's kind of interesting because it's gotten to the point where it really does seem like the whole Canadian way is being pushed on you. Like, when I watch, I try not to watch TV anymore, just because of just how ridiculous it is, and how I can't stand the same Vagisil commercial 6 times in 1/2 hour. But anyways, it's gotten to the point where, it's almost like take the Super Bowl commercials. I really highly recommend to anyone. This is just an example of cultural programming, for example. One of the Super Bowl commercials, they have these two people having sex, and it's if you're a vegan, you'll last longer. And they're trying to pretty much guilt trip people that are meat eaters and stuff. And I'm kind of okay, it's a funny commercial. Blah blah blah. PETA trying to do their own thing, even though they've they go on this self-righteous thing about how they love animals, even though their kill shelters have there's been a few pictures of people that have gone in their investigative reporting and showed just how more than happy PETA kill shelters are at taking out animals and stuff like that, even animals that didn't really need to get euthanized. But that's a whole nother story. But then they have another one where there's somebody brushing his teeth, and they're trying to guilt trip you into not running the faucet while you're these are $1 million that are spent in by Colgate. Colgate, for example, in the States they have to put poison labels on their freaking toothpaste because it's got fluoride in there. If ingested, consult a poison dog. Poison control center, and it's are you kidding me? Here they are trying to tell people about don't keep that tap running a little bit longer. God forbid you waste you waste some water while you're using our product that has fucking known carcinogens. But it's good for your teeth, so yeah. Whether or not you agree with the fluoridation thing, that's regardless. It's just the fact that they're spending millions and millions of dollars to try to put these ads in to tell you how to live. In the States, it's probably a lot more different than here in Canada. But here in Canada, you see a lot of roll up the rim is on right now. So, you gotta go down to your Tim Hortons and get a roll up the rim because you might win a bagel. That's what Canadian, media is all about. It's all about trying to make you, that hockey game. That's all I care about is that hockey game. Canadians in the snow in the winter, they love their Tim Hortons coffee, they love their beer, and they love hockey. That's pretty much what we're brainwashed into. Every Canadian Tire commercial, aside from the weird ones where they're putting a truck in ice and oh man. But no, it's an obvious when you look at commercials nowadays, especially the Super Bowl was probably one of the best examples because a lot of it had out of the top 10 commercials that they had at the Super Bowl, I was watching this ad for, almost every single one was about trying to shame you into acting a certain way, to make you do something so that you don't, it's just a whole total social programming. And I think anybody should be, anybody who's listening to this obviously is awake because, you're probably oh, who's Rectitude Media, or might not have, seen one of my posts or whatnot. And, I'm pretty opinionated, and heck, I'll admit when I'm wrong. I'm not having all the answers. I don't, have any secret links to what's going on behind closed doors. I'm just trying to figure everything out like the rest of us. But the thing is, when we get to a point where people don't ask questions, where people don't investigate things, when people don't do research and look into what's going on in the world, then that's a very scary position where we've come to in a society, where we allow ourselves to be programmed, where we allow ourselves to be dominated and controlled by, not having to, oh, God forbid, I say this because I don't want to offend these people, or, oh, God forbid, I have to say this because I don't want to gender confuse someone, or, when they're banning the founding father, the term founding fathers in San Diego just before President's Day weekend. That's pretty bold. And it took a constitutional lawyer and outrage from a lot of parents to be able to, put that, to sink that proposition. But they're trying to do it in a way where they're trying to censor free speech. And it's going more and more towards a 1984 Orwellian kind of society than it is an open society, or more like a Star Trek society where, there is a one world government, but it's all meant that we have replicators and stuff where there is no third world. There is, everybody is based on the merits of their own abilities and the use that they have to society. That is how people's status is judged. And I would love to have a scientific, kind of like the Venus Project, for example, and have kind of feed the third world so there isn't people starving to death, but it's just not going to happen with the way that we have the status quo as it is today. It is bent. It is pretty much based off of the idea that a huge group of people are going to have nothing so that a small group of people can have everything. That's just how it is right now. And until we topple that pyramid structure, we're doomed as a society. We are walking blindly into World War III. And the way that the average public seems to care more about the MTV and about the award shows and stuff like that, I have to say, I think that we deserve to go into a World War III scenario. We deserve to go into an economic depression because nobody is paying attention. And until we get to that point where all hell breaks loose and we realize, oops, something bad's going on here. We got to do something differently. As an organization, if an organism doesn't have any external threats, then it has no real incentive to change. It's just going to exist as a amorphous blob, pretty much. And I should know, because I kind of got the whole amorphous blob thing going for me right now. But anyways, I'm just saying is that if we don't have any adversity, then, as a society, we're going to degrade into having people control things for us, decide things for us. And I'm totally against that. And, it's really easy for me to say what's all the different problems out there. And I have a lot of respect for people that are saying, this world is screwed up, this whole system is corrupt, here's how we fix it. And, that's why I like watching channels like Press for Earth. I haven't really had a whole lot of free time. So Kyle, if you're watching, peace on, buddy. You're awesome, and keep on doing what you're doing. And, it's just to the point where people really got to decide, tell your family, tell your folks, any way you can wake them up to what's going on, the better. In a lot of regards, people are woken, but, making that extra leap for them to think that this isn't just, government incompetence, and that, it's not just, greedy people, and that it actually is designed this way, and that we have to, call out mainstream media. Newspapers and certain stuff like that, they're dying right now just because they don't have that $1 billion backing, and people aren't paying attention anymore. People can get information from the internet. People can get information from different sources now, which makes it a lot easier than what it used to be. Beforehand, people used to take everything that was on the 6 o'clock news as gospel. And here in Canada, I don't know what's like in the States. They still do. And you look at in the States, it really does seem that they do have a huge dumbed-down population too. But that is designed. When you look at everything that's just done with our way of life in a society, is engineered into not asking questions. But yeah, so that's pretty much it right now. Just keeping an eye on what's going on with the economy, keeping an eye on what's going on with the whole Russia situation. And also keeping an eye on what's going on with Libya because they're trying to organize a government there, but they've already tried to do a couple of things that have fallen through beforehand, so I'm keeping an eye on that situation because I believe that people should really keep informed on that. And the whole Ukraine thing is a prime example of just how the media likes to not report on things that they should be reporting on, and why they're just completely irrelevant. And anyways, thank you guys very much for listening to my rants, and keep on rocking in the free world. I think for people that really want to get some good daily reports on the economic situations of things, it's mostly focused on the States, but he also does tie into oil sectors and resources that are heavily tied to Russian or Canadian economies, for example. And the X-22 report, I do recommend highly for anybody to check that out because they do have some really good stuff on there. And he makes it I don't know how that guy does it. I think Dave is his name. Every day or two, he's making some really good videos, and he also has the X-22 Spotlight. And I've been kind of looking into editing videos and stuff like that. I really suck at Lightworks. I tried doing one video. I spent all this time doing a video on the Economic Collapse series on the U.S., and then I ended up trying to edit it, and then I ended up screwing up my whole video because apparently if you edit it, then if you move the file at all, then on your computer that doesn't help at all. So but I'm going to keep trying and try to get better at that whole thing. I'm also thinking about doing something where my grandparents just happen to have a bunch of side businesses too, and they have a button business where you can design your own custom buttons. And I'm thinking about maybe getting a website up to kind of do my media stuff too, and also maybe have it so that if anyone, to kind of help fund the operation, I guess. I don't want to start talking about that stuff because I don't like the idea of getting money off of people that are just trying to fight the New World Order themselves, I mean, but it definitely would be kind of good to do more professional so that I can actually do it as a job, because I can't really do much now. My back being screwed up. I can maybe on my feet for about 2 hours a day, and then I'm done. It really kind of sucks in that regards. But anyways, guys, I'm not going to talk too much about my crappy predicament. I'm going to let you guys all know that, keep on rocking in the free world, and care deeply about you all. And thanks for listening. Thanks for spending the time and listening to me rant. And I'll be keeping up as much as I can with the videos on a regular basis. So you guys keep rocking. Thank you very much.